Hey guys, I'm outside of the Leonardo Club in Tiberias, Israel, and I have completed day 2 of my journey in Israel. And today was just an incredible day. I don't know what all to say about it other than just pointing out the fact that God is amazing and the Bible comes alive when you're in Israel, which I'm hoping these videos will help it come alive for you as well. So in this video, we are going to break down day 2 of Israel into several videos because we saw so much in one day that putting it into one video is almost impossible. We are going to start with Caesarea Maritima, or Caesarea by the Sea. It was a city created by Herod the Great 2,000 years ago, and it was a city designed as a Roman city to appease the Romans. You're going to see a lot about that. I'm going to show you a lot of video clips and pictures from Caesarea Maritima, but I am going to be giving some voiceover as you watch these clips, explaining what you're seeing, how it relates to scripture, and the significance of it. You don't want to miss this. Let's go.
And they built 5 cities: Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gaza, Gath, and Ekron. 5 cities on the south end of the Mediterranean. I will make a pause for a moment. It might be that your relatives will text you later on because they are still asleep. What is going on? Are you okay? Pressure. That's because last night the Hamas, the terroristic organization, they shot one rocket over a city called Sderot over here. From Gaza Strip, they shot one rocket, and Israel answered a little bit harder. So it might be that it reached the news in America, and then your relatives will write you, "Oh, are you in danger? Come back home immediately." You know how it is. Tell them, "I'm okay. We're traveling in the north part of the country. We're not in danger, and hey, where's the trust in God?" Okay? You know what is the 11th commandment? Let's see, who knows what is the 11th commandment? It is. I'm not making it up. Check Matthew chapter 6, verse 26. Do we agree that Jesus is God?
Yes.
Okay. God gave the commandments? Okay, so if Jesus says, "Do not worry," is it a command?
Yes.
He said, "Do not kill," right? "Do not murder,"
Yes.
"Do not commit adultery." So if he says in Matthew 6, chapter 26, "Do not worry," and he talks about the birds, the plants, do they look to you worry? No. So why should you do? So tell your relatives, "Don't worry, trust God, we're okay, everything is fine."
The city of Caesarea, which is known as Caesarea Maritima now, or Caesarea Maritima, Maritima or maritime just means by the sea, so Caesarea by the sea. It's one of the most important cities in Israel at the time of Jesus, and even into the first few centuries of the early church. It was a massive, massive city. It was home of Cornelius, the first Gentile convert we see in Acts 10, and of Philip the evangelist. Herod Agrippa was actually smitten by an angel of the Lord at Caesarea. Paul visited this city. Paul was imprisoned in this city. It was just a very, very important city. I'm going to explain about this city as we talk, but also explain what you're seeing in the video. So right now in the video, these are marble pieces that were brought in from Italy, decorated by Herod the Great. Herod the Great actually built this city. You can see these statues made of marble that were imported from Italy, and these are statues that Herod brought in. Herod, between 22 and 9 BC, Herod built this city, made it a great harbor. It had actually a population just under 100,000 people larger than the population of Jerusalem, and it was spread over thousands of acres. This was a massive, massive city built by Herod the Great. When the Romans ruled Judea, the prefects or governors resided in Caesarea, and the Romans annexed Judea in 6 BC and made Caesarea the headquarters of their governors and their governorship and their administration. Pontius Pilate was actually one of these governors. One of the things Herod built, you'll see in the video now, is a theater, a massive theater, could sit over 4,000 people, and they did plays and shows and things to entertain. Herod was a great builder. Herod actually expanded and built the temple to please the Jews. Well, he built this city with the theater and the entertainment to please the Romans, and he did both. Now, Herod was not a Roman, but he was from the area, and they took people from the area and made them governors. And so he was a governor under Rome, even though he was not a Roman. After 70 AD, Caesarea actually becomes a Roman colony and the local Roman capital of that area for over 600 years. For nearly 600 years that it's a Roman province, a Roman area, very, very important area. Then after that, it still became a primary important area even through the Crusades until it was eventually completely destroyed. Archaeologists actually began to work on Caesarea Maritima in 1873, and that work continues even to this day. What's crazy is, although the total excavation seems minimal, it seems like a small area, it's really not. The overall area of the ancient city was 8,000 acres, and only 5 of those acres have actually been dug and had architectural work done to it. And the discoveries have been amazing. It's been huge. So out of all 8,000 acres, only 5 have been dug. Imagine what's going to happen when they continue to dig. It's incredible. The city was luxurious. It focused on trade, luxury, focused on entertainment, and mosaic sidewalks with long rows of columns led out of the city into the theater just outside of the city. Thousands of columns standing in parallel rows along the main streets made majestic promenades throughout the city. More than 1,300 column fragments were found on the bottom of the harbor alone, and they were made of marble, which isn't found in Israel, so it would have been imported from Italy and Egypt. Columns of peat granite came from Aswan. Large slabs covered streets and sidewalks, and maritime trade by the sea at this port was extensive. This was a massive city and a very important city at the time of Jesus. In 1962, there was a stone found that said, we call it the Pontius Pilate stone. It was discovered in this area, which actually provided evidence of Pilate being a person, being real, and his presence there in Jesus' time. And it's very important because for a long time, Pontius Pilate was just mentioned in the Bible, but there was no archaeological evidence he ever existed, so people didn't believe he existed. Many believe it was just a story made up in the Bible. But it's true that it actually did exist. The stone was found with an inscription that said, Pontius Pilate, the prefect of Judea, built and dedicated the Tiberium. So this proved that Pontius Pilate was a real person, a real Roman governor or prefect in Israel, in Judea at the time of Jesus. Very, very important find. Herod also built an important massive palace here, and he had an indoor pool. This is what a pool would have looked like. It was a massive palace that kind of hung over the ocean, the Mediterranean, and the indoor pool was fresh water, so you had fresh water brought in to fill the pool. And we don't have much remains of the pool palace anymore, but we do have this right here where you can see the water. So you see where the waves are crashing in, but then kind of stopping, and there's this area right there where the waves are not going into. That is actually part of the pool, and you can see that difference, and the reason why the waves aren't crashing in because there's a wall that goes all the way down to the ground, causing it to separate from the ocean. and that was part of the indoor pool. He also built a hippodrome, which is where horse races with chariot races would happen, and it's basically the first idea. It's almost like this huge race. Think of a NASCAR track, except going around the track would be the horses and chariots, and they had people who would come watch these and bet on the races. This is, again, part of that entertainment factor. But the key thing is the biblical things that happened in this city. That's the important thing to keep in mind. In this city, there were several things that happened. First, the first biblical figure actually associated with the city was a Christian named Philip, who shared the gospel in Caesarea after a great persecution expelled many believers from Jerusalem. You can read about that in Acts chapter 8. And then eventually Philip settled in Caesarea, living there with his family and hosting other believers at his home. You can read that in Acts 21. So Philip lived in Caesarea, and he was there preaching the gospel. Now think about what it would be like, surrounded by paganism and Roman luxury, and you are there living for Jesus, trying to preach the gospel to them. So then you also have Paul the Apostle, who traveled through Caesarea many times in scriptures. You can see early in his life, when his life was threatened in Jerusalem, the believers there helped him escape through Caesarea to Tarsus through a ship that would have been on the ocean here. And then after a second missionary journey, Paul passed through Caesarea on his way to the Syrian area of Antioch, and using his time in Caesarea as an opportunity to visit Jerusalem. You read about this in Acts 18. And then on his famous and final recorded trip to Jerusalem near the end of the book of Acts, Paul stayed in Caesarea with Philip the evangelist for several days, meeting with Agabus the prophet and enjoying fellowship with local believers. You can read about this in Acts 21. They begged him not to go to Jerusalem, but Paul went anyways. He couldn't be dissuaded. Later, Paul was imprisoned in Caesarea for years, facing several trials before various Roman officials, where he got the chance to share the gospel with them. This is between Acts 23 and 26, and he was imprisoned here in Caesarea. So this is the place Paul was actually put into house arrest. And then finally, one of the biggest things that we can see, or that happened here, is that the gospel came to the Gentiles here. In Acts 10, Cornelius gave his life to Jesus. The gospel was preached, and the gospel came to Cornelius through the preaching of Peter. This is a huge story, a huge shifting point in the book of Acts, where the gospel moves from just being to Jews to the Gentiles, and the Gentiles are grafted in.